Hi guys, welcome to this morning's Sunday Slot. This is the story of Josh Quigley. Josh is an ultra cyclist. He's a champion athlete. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's on track to win the 2026 Tour de France, and he's focused and determined. But how does a guy that, in his young age, contemplated suicide and actually attempted to do this, get to this stage where actually he's now got this mindset that he's going to do this? So we're going to bring Josh on and talk about his journey. I mean, some people know about Josh's journey, but some people do not know at all. And it's an amazing journey from up to this point in time. And then we'll also talk about something else exciting at the end. But I'll bring Josh on just now. Hi, Josh. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. We just talked about this. You're desperate to get out on your bike, aren't you?
I am.
And I've just been out for a run. Hence the reason why I've got a glass of water next to me. Okay, we're going to talk about at the end what was it like to win the 2026 Tour de France. But briefly,
I can't tell you yet.
And then what we're going to talk about as well is your journey from the very beginning. You know, I mean, we're all born at an early age, at 0. But were you just like anybody else, or would you say you were exceptional in the beginning?
I was always a bit of a paradox because when I was younger, growing up, I was, just to put it very Scottishly, I was just a wee fanny, essentially. I used to like just going out with my mates, kicking a ball about, causing trouble, drinking, all the sort of things that you would get up to as a wee boy growing up if you were that sort of guy. So I think it was easy to look at me and think that I was just that sort of guy and I was just a troublemaker and all that, because that was a big part of my life. But something that I think always gets overlooked with me is that my whole life, my entire life, since I can remember being a wee boy, 10 years old, 11 years old, I always just had this relentless drive and ambition and confidence and self-belief. And that for me manifested really early in my life with entrepreneurship. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. My dad gave me Richard Branson's autobiography when I was like 10 years old. Read that cover to cover and thought, that's exactly what I'm going to be when I grow up. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And like a lot of entrepreneurs, I have all those sort of classic high school stories, tuck shop empires, selling cans of juice to my mates in school and all that. That was my sort of thing. That was the sort of wee guy that I was. And I never really had an idea for a proper business when I was leaving school. So I just went to university and studied business until I had an idea. So I think that I always had something about me. I always had that drive. I always had that, self-belief and the confidence that just, if I could find something to put it into, I would have a lot of success and I could go really far. So what's interesting for me is that I originally got into cycling because I was basically depressed, coming off the back of a suicide attempt. I was drinking, doing drugs, living a really unhealthy lifestyle. And then that sort of manifested over time, something that I was doing just to feel better, improve my happiness, improve my well-being. I actually started to get quite good at cycling. I started to really enjoy it and developed a passion for it. And that's led to some of the things I've done in the last couple of years with the record attempts and cycling around the world and some of these big achievements that I've got. But I think something that does get overlooked to me is that, when you're thinking of me as a guy that got into cycling because I was depressed and a guy who was in that really dark place, a lot of the time you forget that underneath that, I was still that guy who was driven and confident and had all the ambition. But I just went through a really difficult period in my life where I kind of forgot all that. So it was always there. It was always there underneath. And I just never really had something to put it into. And I think now with cycling, I've got something like a real vehicle that I can put all that drive, energy, determination, all that mental, psychological stuff that I've got, which is really the number one thing that has got me any success I've had on a bike. It comes for that mindset, but it's definitely always been there.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about, you go back to saying that your dad gave you Richard Branson's book when you were younger, and that's fine. But what was it inspired you and driven you forward? Do you think people are born like this, or do you think you're made? Because it's a long-standing argument. I used to argue with my pal. It's like he used to say, "Oh, leaders are born," and well, you can't argue with that because every single leader's born. But I always said leaders can be made. But what's your thoughts on that? Do you think it's the same, similar to yourself? Do you think it's the fact that you've always had this in you, this burning desire, or do you think there was something round about you that made that happen?
I think the answer is probably somewhere in the middle, probably both. I think there's definitely people who are not born with amazing talents that go on to achieve really amazing things just because they've just worked harder than anybody else. Like there's people who were born with no real physical or genetic talent at certain things, but just through practice, the 10,000 hour rule, just putting in the work, they've got there. I think for me, it's a little bit different. I genuinely think I was born with it because it's never something that I've ever had to try to do. It's never something I've had to put any effort into. Like for me to believe in myself is as automatic as waking up in the morning. It doesn't require any effort for me to believe in myself. So, that self-belief, the confidence, the drive, it's always been there. And something that I've always said to people in the last couple of years when I've been, giving the talks and doing stuff like this is that I honestly don't think I've got any physical or genetic talent that's allowed me to have success on a bicycle. I believe that I'm talented and I believe that I'm gifted, but I think it's all psychological and mental. I think that the fact that I've just got that relentless drive and determination and I just don't quit really and I just keep persevering all the time, that's the thing that's led to any success I've ever had on a bike. It's not the physical stuff. And so I think for me personally, it's always been there. It's something that I was blessed with.
So do you think, I mean, what then, if you've always got that, then what prompted you to do this at an early age and get into a car and drive into a wall?
I went through a really difficult time in 2015. At that time, I was living my dream, essentially. That 10-year-old wee boy that wanted to grow up and be an entrepreneur like Richard Branson. At 21 years old, I had my own business. We had an office, we had staff. I was awarded Young Entrepreneur of the Year by Forth Valley Chamber of Commerce. I was building a reputation as a up-and-coming aspiring entrepreneur within the Edinburgh and Scottish business network. I was literally living my dream, and it was just I was having so much fun running a business. For the first time at 21 years old, going to the meetings and signing clients and all that sort of stuff. It was just so amazing, and I was just literally living my dream. There was just the amount of passion and love that I had for just building that business was just incredible. But at the end of 2014, my long-term girlfriend and I broke up. We'd been together for like 7 or 8 years, got together like 14, 15 years old, all the way to 22. So that was a really difficult thing to deal with. It was, I don't say that for people to feel sorry for me. It was largely my fault. I was just quite selfish, self-centered. I was spending all my time building my business during the week or wanting to go out at the weekend with my mates. So, she had enough and left, and that was what happened. But it was incredibly difficult, and I found it just really difficult to deal with. And so the first 6 months of 2015, I was just in a really dark place. I just felt horrible. I'd lost all passion and interest for the business that I was running. I was struggling to get out of bed to go and do that during the week. Thursday to Sunday, I'm living in the pub, just trying to escape as much as I can with drugs and alcohol. So that's basically where things went wrong for me in 2015.
When you talk about the drugs and alcohol, was that a mechanism just to block things out? Was that just to blank things out, to just numb yourself from it? Because a lot of people talk about that when they get into that state. They do it just to numb themselves and just stop thinking about it.
I think that the drugs and alcohol thing for me, it was, being honest, it was always something that I'd done when I was growing up. I started drinking when I was 12, just on the streets with me and my mates. Then 16, started going out to pubs. When we started doing that, we started doing drugs as well. And to be honest with you, if you're like 16 to 22, I was just a guy that loved living for the weekend. There was nothing better back then. Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday, just going out with my mates and, doing that sort of stuff. So that was always something for me. It was always a social thing. I was always quite good at being able to keep it at the weekends. So, Monday to Friday, I would still go and still, go to work and all that sort of stuff. And I was still functioning. But in 2015, when it started to become more toxic, I suppose, it wasn't just a social thing anymore. It was more of that escape. And I found that it was really affecting my life to the point where I was hammering it that much at the weekends that, Monday to Thursday, I was like a zombie, I wasn't doing anything. Yeah. And I was lucky that I was in a position where I had my own business, I had people working for me. They managed to keep things going, but there wasn't anybody really there driving the business anymore. So we were were servicing our existing clients, but I was the one that was doing all the business development and getting the new clients and the new customers and really trying to take the business forward. And I wasn't really doing that anymore. So the business started to go downhill as well. And it was just a really horrible time in my life.
We talked about this off air about, at younger age. I mean, I'm a similar background as well in terms of, it was the drink culture when you were younger. It was almost like the typical, if you watch Chewing the Fat, where the policeman turns up and goes, he's not taking a drink. And the boy goes, go on, pal, take a drink. And it's like everybody almost thinks this is a normal part of culture, actually, to encourage younger people to drink. That's the environment we grew up in. And it was just a natural thing to do. And you're absolutely right. You hung about in the Glen, you hung about in the beach, you hung about anywhere you could get with your mates. And you tended just to look for, I want a better phrase, look for trouble. and I think it was that excitement thing people tended to want to do. We reflect on the youth of today now and we castigate them. And I'm thinking, but you've created them. It's exactly what you've actually taught them that, and that's what they're doing. So we've talked about that. We're kind of similar backgrounds, kind of driven as well. You talked about things like, what advice would you give someone that's a younger person? In terms of if they're in that sort of zone just now, if they're in that depressive state, if they are turning to drink and alcohol and drugs and.
I think it's a tricky one. It's always hard to know what to say, but I think the challenging thing about being in headspace like that is that you make this false assumption, or you have this false belief that how you feel then is how you're going to feel forever. And that's really where I was in the first 6 months of 2015. I was just so depressed and so suicidal. And I just couldn't imagine being happy ever again. I couldn't imagine ever getting over that breakup. I couldn't imagine ever meeting anybody else. I just couldn't imagine my life ever getting better. And so when you don't have that hope and you're struggling so much, it's hard to just keep going. So I think the first thing that I would probably try and say to people, and this is hard because it's hard to believe it when you're in that place, it's just to try and remember that how you feel now is not how you're going to feel forever. And 6 months' time, 12 months' time, 2 years' time, you can feel a lot better. That's usually where I start. Over and above that, I think something that's a difficult conversation but needs to be had is that sometimes in order for your life to change and for your life and for you to feel better, you're going to have to do something about it. You're going to have to make some changes. And for me, at one point in 2015, I realized that, I wasn't taking any responsibility for my life. I was blaming the breakup. I was blaming Scotland's drinking culture. I'd blaming other things that had happened in my life growing up. And I realized that, I need to take responsibility here. And I done like this thing called a life audit, where I just looked at every area of my life and thought, what changes can I start making? Yeah. And I realized that, I'm drinking 4 nights a week. My diet's terrible. Don't exercise. Watching a lot of TV. I just started changing stuff like that. Stopped drinking, started eating better, exercising, started reading books. And it's no surprise that just by making all these little small changes in my life, I started to feel better and I had a wee bit of momentum again. So you need to understand that things can get better, but you're probably going to have to do something about it as well. It's not going to come on its own.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it is the case that if you keep doing the same things and expecting a different result, it is really the height of ignorance. That's really what it comes down to. It's delusional, for want of a better phrase. You talked about things like your life audit. I mean, where did you get that idea? Where did a life audit come from? I mean, and you talked about as well about the 10,000 hour rule. Where's all that come from?
I went down a bit of a rabbit hole with personal development that year. I think it's something that happens to a lot of people. A lot of people are brought into personal development from a place of pain. And I know that was my story. I had a conversation in September 2015 with my business mentor that really changed my life. A guy called Alan Bonner, really successful businessman, been my mentor for the last 5 years. And we were having a conversation on the phone, and I said to him, if only me and my girlfriend never broke up, I would be happy and the business would be doing so much better. And he said to me, what other excuses have you got? And I swear to God, that was just like
wow.
It was such a defining moment in my life. Like
a punch in the face.
The one question, he just called me out in my bullshit, and I just realized I was like, fuck, he's right. Like I need to do something about this. And so it was that conversation with Alan, and then he then gave me a book, which was the first book I ever read in personal development, 2015, Success Principles by Jack Canfield. And
it is here.
Yeah.
And I'm reading it just now.
First chapter of the book is you're 100% in control of your life. And I swear to God, that chapter changed my life. And even now, looking back, it seems like such basic information, but at the time, for me, it was mind-blowing. It was, you know, I literally was thinking to myself, like, if all these things in my life never happened, I could be happy. And I realized that, you know, I need to just take control here. And it's the wee formula that Jack spoke about in that chapter, E plus R equals O. The event in your life plus your reaction determines the outcome. And I realized that, yes, the breakup was a terrible event, and it's something that I wouldn't wish upon anybody, and it's really tough and painful. But my response to that, drinking, drugs, not doing anything about it, was equally as negative as the event. And so as a result, the outcome was depression, suicide, all that sort of stuff. And so I realized that in order to change my life, I need to change the response. Yeah. I can't change the breakup. That's happened. Accept it, deal with it, take the lessons. But I can now change my response and change who I am. And so that's why I started going down the personal development path and started just reading all the books, eating better, meditating, exercising, you know, just all the stuff you could possibly do to make yourself feel better. And it worked.
It is a path that a lot of people actually take when they realise that they are at the rock bottom. You know, it's the typical. I mean, I know you're quite young, but typically it's a midlife crisis for most people. That's really what happens to them, and a lot of people actually run straight away for the bottle. You know, they go straight away for the alcohol because it's an easy gig, and it's a live for the weekend thing. It's like, let's just work during the week and get lashed at the weekend. Work during the week, lashed at the weekend. And they don't realise that there's something. I mean, you know, I've been reading Success Principles as well, and it's amazing to think that just 1 hour of television less every single day over a 12-year period will actually recover back 2 years of your life. What? How to get 2 years of your working life back? Imagine getting 2 years' salary just straight in your hand just because you watched 1 less hour of television and used it productively. That's amazing to think that, and it's the compounding effect. And it's like what you said. What about the 10,000 hour rule then? What was that?
So the 10,000 hour rule, I believe, is a concept by Malcolm Gladwell. I'm not sure if it's an actual book or not, but I just know of it. I think it's a book potentially. Do you know? Can you confirm that?
Possibly. Let's just assume it is.
It's in one of his books anyway. I think Malcolm Gladwell, really incredible guy. He's got this concept of 10,000 hours that until you put 10,000 hours into something, you can't really say you're an expert or feel qualified in that thing. So it's just a wee thing that I like to think about as well, that, you know, I think just putting in the work just it's the bread and butter. You need to do it. You're never going to get there without doing the work.
Yeah. So let's come back a wee bit to your cycling then. So you had your Forrest Gump moment then. You know, basically you just said, right, I've had enough. I'm just gonna cycle around the world. Is that literally what you thought to yourself? That's it. I'm just gonna cycle around the world.
Pretty much. This is now like the back end of 2015. I was obviously started this new personal development journey. I was looking for, you know, I was changing all these things in my life. A lot of lifestyle things like sober and diet, exercise, all that. But I was also looking for something different to do in my life as well. I just felt unfulfilled in the business that I was running, and I just thought I need something different. I happened to go along to an event in Edinburgh, a business event where Sir Chris Hoy was giving a talk about the mindset of a champion, I believe it was called, or something like that. And I was there that day as an entrepreneur to network and do that sort of thing. Had no real athletic or sporting bits in me at that time. You know, I was quite overweight, out of shape and all that. But there was just something about the talk that day. I don't know what it was. I don't really think it was Sir Chris's talk, to be honest. I think he just helped me see something in myself that was always there. He awoke something that day, and I was just so inspired by his talk. and sitting in the audience, I said to myself, "Fuck it, I'm going to cycle around the world." That was it. It was just one of those crazy life decisions. I didn't even know anything about it. Didn't know if you could do it. Didn't know if there was a road. Didn't know anything about it. I just, I'm going to cycle around the world.
Sounds like a great idea. To hell with it. I may as well just cycle around the world. That's the type of crazy things I do. It's like, I'm just going to do this, and it's like, oh, how do I do it now?
But I think there's a lot in that. If you think about, being a guy that's depressed, suicidal, overweight, out of shape, not a cyclist, and never been on a bike since I'm a wee boy. Sitting in the audience that day, I just said, I'm going to cycle around the world. And to a lot of people, that seems quite extreme. And I guess it is. To me, it's not really. But I think what's so interesting about that is that when I sat in that audience that day, I said I'm going to cycle around the world with the amount of certainty, like I said, I was going to cycle up to the shop for a pint of milk. Like,
yep.
There was no part of me that day that thought, oh, what if I can't do it? Or I don't think I could do that. I just assumed. I just made this assumption I can cycle around the world. And I think that tells a lot about me and the sort of character that I am. That drive and ambition and self-belief has never, ever been a problem for me. It's always there. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people in that similar position where I was might have said, I'm going to get into cycling. I'm going to buy a bike. I'm going to go for a 20-mile cycle 3 mornings a week. I went straight to the biggest possible thing that I could have possibly done in that moment. Cycling, there's literally nothing bigger I could have done on a bike. Like, I'm at such an early stage of that cycling journey, I can't go into big events or big competitions. The biggest thing I could have possibly done is cycling around the world, and I fucking went for it. And I think all the stuff that I'm going to do over the next 5 to 10 years and all my bigger goals and dreams, so much of that can be made more sense. You can make more sense of that when you realize that I set myself that goal for where I was in 2015.
Did you tell anybody about that goal, about cycling around the world?
Oh, aye. So,
and what was the reaction?
You're absolutely mental. Actually, it's really funny. Actually, I'm now doing a bit of work with Tour de Forth, which is I've
seen that. Yep,
a big cycle sportive in Scotland that's going to be this year. So I'm now an ambassador for them, and it's really interesting. One of the guys who's on the organising committee for that, his name is Martin Much, really successful businessman, passionate about cycling, helping out the event and stuff like that. He's been really good to me over the years. I knew him in my previous life through business. We were both involved in a network, an organisation called We Do Scotland. I remember going along to meet the exec team of We Do Scotland in 2016, just before I set off the cycle around the world, and I was telling them about all my plans and what I was going to try and do. And Martin was there that day, and we met up recently just talking about the Tour de Forth thing. And he says to me, he just admitted to me, he said, I remember that day when you came and told us that day, and I thought, he's absolutely mental. There's just no way that you can do that. And so that I love hearing stuff like that. And I think that's what's happening with me now is the same thing that happened 5 years ago. And that 5 years ago, as a guy that wasn't a cyclist in such a terrible shape, said he was going to cycle around the world, and it seemed absolutely impossible. It seemed absolutely mental. And nobody really gave me a chance, right? If you look at where I'm at now, right, I'm talking about winning the Tour de France. I'm talking about becoming a champion at the highest level. It's going to happen again, where everybody's going to think, do you know what? That's just a step too far. That's impossible. He's not going to do that. And once again, I will get there, and we'll be able to look back in this moment now, and we'll laugh at it the way we laugh at me in 2015. That is going to happen. I can promise you that. With everything,
I believe you.
It's going to happen.
I absolutely believe you. So you've gone round the world. You've faced a huge amount of adversity on the way, though. You know, God, there's been. I mean, what about the crash in America? You know, that was crazy.
It's, you know, this journey for me has been. I don't really talk about it that much, but I probably should talk about it more. This journey for me has been deeply spiritual. And it's the number one thing in my life, even bigger than cycling. This started for me in 2015. You know, when I tried to end my life by crashing my car into a concrete barrier at 70 miles an hour, right? Walked away from that with no physical injuries whatsoever, right? 24 hours after it, I get released from hospital, told that I'm free to go home. Before I did, I walked on to the chapel, and as a guy that was not religious, no spiritual, didn't have any belief system, didn't believe in God, was just living for the weekend, living that life. That night, I wrote a message in the book, and I thanked a God I didn't believe in, and said, I give you my new life. It starts today, and I give it to you. That's something I think about every single day. The fact that I was able to thank a God I never believed in is the ultimate sign of faith.
Yeah.
That night, I've never been the same since that night. I've never been the same since that. Something happened to me that night. I don't know what it was, some sort of awakening or something. Honestly, I don't know how to articulate it, but I just totally changed after that. Up until that point, I was like loving going out and drinking. I loved football. I was really into politics. It was weird after that. I just stopped having interest in going out and drinking. Didn't want to do it anymore. I just stopped watching football, and I just had the interest in politics. It was so weird. I was like, I survived that night physically, but part of me died that night. It was just like I'd spent like 22 years thinking I was this guy, and that night, God or whatever you want to call it came along, just went, nah, that's not who you are. We're going to get you onto your true path. We're going to get you on why you're really here. And ever since that night, my life's just been a whole different path. And the spirituality side of it is so big. And so that leads into the crash in America as well. That's why I was telling you that there's no way there's no some sort of higher power involved in that. It's just unconceivable. If you think about, if you walk over a flyover bridge over a motorway and you see cars flying at 70 miles an hour and you see how fast they're actually gone, and you think about one of those cars coming behind me and hitting me on a bike, and that I've no protection, I'm just on a bike and I get hit from behind at 70 miles an hour and I fly 50 feet through the air and hit the ground, and 9 weeks after that I'm back out cycling on the road. How can you get your head around that? Like it is unbelievable, and there's no way. Honestly, there's somebody looking after me. There honestly is. I really believe it.
We had talked about the nurses and the doctors and that, and when you were in America, and just basically saying you've got no chance of walking so quick or even cycling. They laughed again, really, didn't they? And it was like, you've got no chance. And you're like, no, this is when. Tell us about that. Tell us about that mindset when you had, no, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do it. And this is how, what was behind that? It's just like, I'm going to do it.
I think that I'd been on a bit of a journey that year in 2019 where I'd had like 6 attempts at cycling around the world and never done it, never finished it. But, was just really starting and stopping all the time. April the 14th, 2019, I said, right, I'm going to get on the bike and I'm going to cycle around the world. And this time I'm going to do something I've never done before. I'm going to commit to it and I'm not going to stop until I finish. And that, I swear to God, that moment's up there with so many other big, significant moments. That really changed my life in so many ways. What that done for me, rather than stopping, starting all the time and not really committing to one thing, 8 months later, I'd cycled almost 15,000 miles. I'm almost finished cycling around the world. And I went for a guy that was doing 50 miles a day to doing 200 miles a day, cycling 240 miles, 270 miles. I became the athlete that I was always meant to be on that journey around the world. And I was so committed to finishing the challenge. So when I woke up in hospital and they told me what had happened, my first thought was just, when can I get back on the bike? Because I'm committed to this challenge. I need to finish cycling around the world and there's nothing going to stop me. And there have been so many obstacles that year. On day 6, my bike got stolen in London. Big obstacle. I tried to go over the Alps and the pass was closed because of all the heavy snow. I got sick in Azerbaijan. I got sick in China. I had a damaged passport in Australia. I had to fly home. Just so many things just went wrong. There were just so many obstacles along the way. But I was just keeping going, just keep plugging away at it. And so for me, getting hit by a car in America, it was just another obstacle it was never going to stop me. And I'm so proud of the fact that when I woke up in hospital, that was my first thought. You know, I'm so proud of that. Like, I really am. And I think that tells you just how committed I was to it, that nothing was ever going to get in my way, or nothing was ever going to stop me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you've done round the world. You've got crashed and all the rest of it. I mean, you know, what was the next steps for you after that then? You know, it's like when you came home, you thought, am I just going to get back on the bike? Am I just going to get on with it? Or it was like, okay, have I got a plan of action? Where am I going next and what am I doing? You know, this is the way you've disciplined yourself. You're basically so focused. I was going to put something on your post the other night. It was like when you were talking about your focus, and it was it was a wee meme with a person poking a cat, and it was just like completely focused, and it wouldn't move. And I kind of thought, that's you. You're like, you're blinkered completely and think, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm doing it, and that's it. There's no discussion in your mind. It's like, no, I'm going to do it. So what happened after the around the world? Do you ever want to go back to that, or do you want to, or just like, right, I've done it, it's out of my system, I'm just going to have to draw a line under it, that's it?
I feel insulted at the thought that I'm not going to go back and finish it. That's just how strongly I feel about that. I am 100% going to finish that cycle. I've just physically not been able to, because of the current pandemic. Like, I'm just not capable of getting back to America. So when I got back from America in January 2020, all I was thinking about was getting back to America to go and finish that challenge.
Yeah.
I was back on the bike in March, and at the end of March, I was ready to go back to America and finish cycling around the world. But COVID hit, and so since then, I've been stuck here. And no, not in a negative way. I've made the most of it. I've done other things, but I've really just had to forget about cycling around the world for the last year because it's so out of my control. There's literally nothing I can do about it. I just can't get into America. So I've just been focusing on other things since then. And when America finally opens its borders and the world's back to normal, I'll fly back to Texas. I'll fly back to the place where I got hit. I'll get on the bike. I'll cycle to New York, and I'll finish cycling across America.
And what have you been doing in the meantime then? You've done the NC 500, haven't you? That was amazing.
Yes, I did.
So tell everybody what the NC 500 is, for people that don't know.
So the North Coast 500 is a 516-mile route around the Scottish Highlands. I've rode my bike on 30-plus countries, 4 continents, and that route is my favourite anywhere I've been. It's just absolutely incredible. It's just such a special part of the world. I think for somebody who's so passionate about Scotland, to go up to the Highlands is almost like a sort of pilgrimage and a sort of spiritual experience as well. I feel so connected to that part of the world. So it's really special for me. There was a record for cycling it, and I'd heard about that last year. And so because I wasn't able to go back to America, I decided to have a crack at that. The original record for it was set in 2016 by Mark Beaumont. He done it in about 38 hours, which is just basically non-stop riding. You just go out and ride for 38 hours. Maybe take a couple breaks or something like that. But you're not doing it over like 2 or 3 days or anything. Like, most people would usually do it over about 7 to 10 days. If you were doing it quite fast, you might do it in 5. Some people even do it in 3 if you're going really fast. But the record is like it's an all-out. You're just going for it in a winner. And so that was the original record set by Mark, who's obviously Scotland's greatest ever ultra-endurance cyclist, got the world record for around the world. Mark's record was then beaten the following year by James McCallum, who is an ex-professional, one of the greatest cyclists that Scotland's ever created. James McCallum, got a lot of respect for him. He took the record down to 31 hours and 23 minutes. So
wow.
That was the record, 31 hours and 23 minutes when we were going for it. And what was so interesting about it as well, I've never really spoke that much about this, but I was set to do it on the 19th and the 20th of September, which was, I think it was a Saturday and a Sunday. The previous Saturday, 7 days before my attempt, I found out there was another attempt. Somebody else was going for it. A guy called Gavin Dempster, really, really strong racing cyclist from up in Inverness. So that was obviously quite a big obstacle for me. You know, I'm training for this. I'm training for this time that we're trying to beat. I find that somebody else has gone for it. I'm like, fuck's sake, man. This is meant to be my big moment. And somebody's going to set a new time. Then I need to go and beat that. But Gavin didn't have great conditions. The weather was tough, and he wasn't able to finish it. So there was one attempt that didn't quite make it a week before me. Then I found out there was another attempt 3 days after that, 3 days before I was going to do it. A guy from down south, Alex Reynard, another really strong racing cyclist, really strong guy. So I'm thinking, right, here we go again. And Alex had a few issues and didn't manage to finish it either. So in the few days leading up to my attempt, there was 2 failed attempts at it. And I remember watching them as they were happening. I was following the dots religiously those final few days. And I remember just as the second one was kind of officially over, I thought, this is it. This is my time. This is just my moment. Like, this is my time to go out and show the world what I'm really capable of. Because for the last few years, I've been this kind of round the world cyclist. I've been this charity cyclist. A lot of people within cycling didn't really take me seriously. They see the big goals, they see the big ambition, they think I'm full of shit. This is my chance. This is my coming out party. I can go and show the world what I'm truly made of. And I swear to God, when I got to Inverness, the confidence and assurance that I had in myself I knew I was going to do it. There was no doubt in my mind. There was just something about it. There was something in the air. The weather was perfect. It was just one of those things I believe was just true, like destiny, fate, whatever you want to call it. And also, it happened to be the same weekend as the final day of the Tour de France, which is really weird because as I was riding in Inverness, setting the new record, the Tour de France was finishing in Paris, and the winner for that year was being crowned and getting the yellow jersey, right? I don't think it's a coincidence that I set that record on the same day that was happening, 500 miles away or whatever in Paris. And the weird thing about that as well is that for like the last 110 years or something like that the Tour de France has been a thing, it's always in July. It is always in July. This is the only year, because of the pandemic, the Tour de France was in September. And it happens to be the same day that I do that. And I just feel like that is such an affirmation for my future. And then after it, Brian Smith, the Eurosport commentator, talking about me in Eurosport, gave me a shout out, said, well done, congratulations, Josh. So as the peloton is riding into Paris, going up the Champs-Elysees, the commentators were talking about me on Eurosport.
Brilliant.
If you're telling me that's all a coincidence, then nah, I'm just not having.
It's meant to be. It's the laws of attraction.
It is. There's something happening here. There's something happening. There's a path, and I'm just living it.
You go through these, and I get it as well as the deja vu moment. It's like I've been here before.
Yeah,
I've been successful at this before, and I've seen this happen before, and I think I'm convinced I've done it. So is that your personal experience as well?
I get deja vus a lot, and I have certain things in my life that just sometimes I get like a really vivid deja vu that's like I see like a moment. I've seen that before, like a dream or whatever. But sometimes I'm in a place in my life where it's like when my life just becomes this one big deja vu, where just everything seems familiar. Everything seems like I've seen all this before. I've had that a lot recently. Like at the moment right now, I am arguably the most focused, determined, driven, on the ball, in the game, in the zone that I've ever been. I just feel so clear on my life, who I am, what I'm about, what I'm trying to do, what I'm working towards. I feel so clear right now. And at the moment, just everything seems to be popping. Everything's going well. I'm just attracting all these good things into my life. I'm just really on it right now. And just everything just feels familiar. Like last night, I had like 2 really powerful deja vus. I'm getting them all the time. And I just feel like that there's a path for my life. There is some sort of destiny, something I was destined to do. And that doesn't mean it's going to happen automatically. Yeah. That means that it's like, meet me halfway. Here's your destiny, Josh. This is what you're meant to do. This is what you're capable of. Put in the work and get there. So I believe mine's is to go and win that race, to go and win that Tour de France. That's my destiny. I truly believe it. But my part of that is the training, the nutrition, the mindset, all this stuff. I still need to put in the work. And unless I do, I'm never going to get there. And a quote that I think about, I've got so many quotes in my life, loads of ones that really mean a lot to me. One that really means a lot to me, and I hope I get it right here. I'm trying to remember it. But the definition of hell is your last day on earth. The person you are meets the person you could have been.
You could have been. Wow.
That's
so powerful. I think of that one as well.
It's so powerful. It drives me so much. Like I need to go for this. I need to try and do this, because if I didn't, I would just always regret it, and I would always know that I left something on the table. And so, see if I spend the next 10 years trying to win the Tour de France and I don't, and the reason I don't is because the other guys were just a lot better than me. But I know that I tried my best. I trained as hard as I possibly could. My nutrition was great. My coaching was great. Everything was great. I left it on the table. I can live with that.
Yeah.
But I can't live with no trying. I can't live with that.
The one phrase that resonates in my mind all the time is, if you can, you must. And it sticks with me every single time. If you have an obligation, if you can, to do it and make it happen. And you know, you've been out, where were you out just in the last 6 months? Dubai?
I was out in the UAE in Dubai for some winter training in January, and had an accident out there.
Just an accident. Dear. That's not just an accident, is it? So how did that happen?
Oh, we'd climbed up this mountain, and when we were descending it, was flying down the hill about 40 miles an hour, and it was really windy up there. I think the wind caught my front wheel, and I just lost control of the bike and came off. So it was a pretty sore one.
Do you just? I mean, I've come off my bike before as well, and you kind of never remember what happened. It's just like your mind protects you and just goes blank.
That wasn't my experience that time. The one in Dubai was really quite traumatic, actually. Like when I had the crash in America, I was just riding my bike one night along a highway, and then I woke up in the back of a helicopter. That was pretty much what happened. And by that point, I'm getting pain meds and morphine pumped into me, so I didn't really feel anything in the beginning. But in Dubai, it was the complete opposite. Like I was flying down the hill 40 miles an hour, and then realized, I had maybe a split second where I realized that the bike just started shaking like mad, and I thought, I'm coming off here. And it was the most horrible feeling of dread I've ever had. Honestly, it was so scary, because I just knew I'm coming off at this speed and it's going to be horrible.
It's tank slap. You get on a motorbike as well when you go too fast around the corner. I've had it and crashed. So the wheel just goes out of control, and that's it. You're off.
And so came off, hit the ground, just horrible. You know, so many broken bones and fractures. You know, broke my arm, elbow, shoulder, collarbone, fractures on my pelvis, my spine, 4 broken ribs. You know, loads of abrasions and cuts. Like loads of my skin was taken off of the road. Sitting at the side of the road for an hour waiting on the ambulance with no pain medication. Just honestly, just horrible, so bad. Wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy, but it is what it is. And I just had to get through it again.
And how long ago was that then that happened?
That was just at the end of January, start of February. I was in hospital.
You're on your bike?
Aye.
Wow.
100 miles yesterday.
Wow. I mean, that's you must have some sort of healing power. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, again, we've talked about this off camera. It's like I seem to heal ultra quick in terms of what I do. Anything that happens, I'm healed within 3-4 days.
Aye, my body really does seem to just heal. My body seems to be indestructible in the sense of I've had so many big accidents, and yet I'm still here, and there's nothing wiped me out yet. And it's not to say that it won't ever, but I just believe that there's a path for my life, and so if that's the path, and that's the path. I don't have really any attachment to the outcome, but for now, I'm still here. I'm still going. Yeah. My body seems to just recover fast, and I don't know if that's a natural genetic thing or it's like a mindset thing. I believe it's the mindset thing.
Mindset for me every day, every single day. Mindset. That's what makes the difference. It's fundamentally And Tony Robbins talks about as well, like patients who have had, serious illnesses, they've actually conditioned themselves and thought themselves into actually being right, actually being healed. And he says he can't believe it, but it's remarkable how the mind can do that, because it goes to work on all the things it should do in order to make that happen for you, because you've conditioned yourself to do it. So you had a wee scare in the hospital. What was the arthritis thing? It came up.
Oh, aye. So there was a lot of injuries there as well, and it turns out I've got arthritis on my hip as well. So, that's something that sounds a bit daunting to get in your 20s, but it's not going to stop me. So I don't really care, to be honest. It's just another chapter to the story, really. Just another thing to overcome. And it's, I've now got a whole new audience of people that I can inspire, because how many people in the world have got arthritis. So I can show them that you can still go and achieve physical things, and so it's all good for me. I just make the most of everything that happens in my life. Just all the bad things that happen, I just turn them into good things. And I've just got such a positive mindset.
And it is the success is a journey. It's never a destination, isn't it? It's really, that's what it is, and it's keeping going. And it's the fact that you lie down and don't get back up. It means you'll never make it, and that's the resilience. You just get back up every single time, regardless. It's like it's a natural instinct. You've programmed yourself to do that.
I just don't see, like, what's the alternative? Like, you have a crash, you come off your bike, and people say, like, oh, I don't know how you just keep going and keep picking yourself back up. What is the alternative to getting back in the bike? What, just saying I'm done? Like,
yeah,
I've come too far. Like, I've put too much time and effort in the last 4 or 5 years into cycling to just walk away now. Like, it's honestly, I couldn't even imagine what my life would look without cycling. Like, I just think there's certain people in life are born to do certain things, and I would be absolutely hopeless at almost every other thing in life. Like, I would be the single worst employee in probably the history of the world. Like, I couldn't do it. I just, I'm just so, like, set in my ways and so, like, independent. I just couldn't work for anybody else. It's just no part of my DNA. So I couldn't even imagine. Honestly, I just couldn't imagine what I would do in my life if I didn't do this. Like, it just feels so meant to be and so perfect. And if you were going to create, see, for the life that I'm living, if you were going to create a guy to live my life, you create him exactly as I am right now. There's almost no way I wasn't created for this.
Mm-hmm. So this leads me to believe, there's a certain guy that actually got in touch with you, and he says, look, you met up with him to write your book. What's that? What's behind that then?
The book's interesting because I keep trying to write it, but I keep also thinking to myself, just wait a wee bit longer. Do you know what I mean?
It's the same guy that wrote the book for David Beckham, isn't it?
David Beckham and Andy Murray.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good company.
That would be a nice club to be in. He's a really, really amazing journalist and writer. Worked for the Sunday Times for 30 odd years, tennis correspondence. And he's only ever wrote 2 autobiographies, and one was David Beckham, the other was Sir Andy Murray, and the third would be mine. So that, even when that happened, I thought, are you trying to tell me that's a coincidence as well? Like, it's just like this is another thing that's affirming this path that I'm on, that I'm going to get to that level. And so I'm not really sure what's happening with the book at the moment, because the pandemic kind of got in the way and affected timelines and stuff like that. But I'm still a wee bit unsure about the book. Like, I really am, because I feel like to tell the story now and write the book would be such a great story, such a great book. But there's part of me thinks, why would you tell this?
There's more to come.
I just feel like there's still more to come, and I just think that I only really
get one second book. You could do a sequel.
No, there'll definitely be more than one, but I just feel like maybe it's I don't know the answer to that. I try and just surrender to life and let these things take place as they do. So I'll see how that flows and how that goes. But at the moment, I'm all right not writing a book right now. I'll need to catch up with Neil soon, because we've not spoken in a while, and see what his thoughts are. But if we never wrote a book right now, I wouldn't mind waiting to 2026, because I think that's a much better story.
And finally, can I ask you what it was like to win the Tour de France in 2026?
It was everything that I ever dreamed of and more.
I couldn't believe it when you crossed the finish line. It was amazing. I was literally standing in the crowd, actually watching you as you crossed the finish line, and I burst into tears. Basically, I couldn't believe it.
It is fascinating talking about all this stuff because to a lot of people, 90% probably listening to me talk like this, it's just they think that guy's delusional, that guy's out of his mind. And something that I realized recently is that they're right in a way. I am delusional because I live in a future that's not yet arrived. And that's the reason why I'm going to do it. Because I see myself as this person that I am actually right now, but I can see it in there. And eventually my body's just going to catch up with it. And another quote that means a lot to me as well is that God never gives you an idea that you're not capable of fulfilling. And why would I think about this so much? Like, you wouldn't believe the amount of the time that I spend thinking about this. It's just, I am obsessed by it. I visualize it so clearly. I've got songs in my life that I listen to every day, and every song is a visualization. For example, I visualize flying back in Edinburgh Airport in one of Nike's private jets. As I get off the plane and walking down the steps, Journey, Don't Stop Believing is playing. I can see myself shaking hands with the captain, walking down the steps, shaking hands with all the air hostesses, walking through the airport, waving at all the border guards, standing at that bit where the double doors in Edinburgh Airport just about to open, just as the chorus, The Journey, Don't Stop Believing is about to kick in. Those double doors open, and I'm just standing there in that yellow jersey, and there's fucking thousands of people on the other side waiting for me to come back home. You can't see anything except Scotland flags, tears. Just incredible, man. Just see if I've got a 1% chance of making that happen. I need to fight for it because it's worth fighting for. If I could pull that off, it would just honestly, I know I'm biased because it's my life and I'm so close to it, but I just think it would be the greatest sporting achievement ever. I just think it would. For the place I came from where I started, there's nobody ever got to the highest level of sport from the place I started. Never. And especially knowing the biggest and most famous cycling race in the world. Like the Tour de France is bigger than cycling. Everybody knows about the Tour de France. It's such a big thing. And to be somebody who grew up so passionate about Scotland and just loves Scotland so much, to be the first ever Scottish winner of that race would just be so special. And I truly believe it's why I'm here. And something else I'll tell you, something else that I think about all the time, when I first had the idea for all this cycling stuff and the Tartan Explorer and all the stuff that I started in 2015, when I had the original idea, I sent my auntie a text and I says to her, I've just had a crazy idea that I think might make me the most famous person in Scotland. And I think about that so much, like, because cycling around the world and starting a mental health thing isn't going to make you the most famous person in Scotland. But if you win the Tour de France and be the first ever Scottish winner for at least 24 to maybe 48 hours, you are the number one most talked about thing in Scotland. There's not a person in this country, in any of the Highlands or the Islands, no matter how far away you are, that isn't going to hear about that on that day. And to think that I said that in 2015, having no idea of where I was going to go, just further proof for me. And I'll finish it with another wee quote that kind of demonstrates what I just said. Every seed has an intelligence of the tree it's going to become. I knew the path. I've always knew it. And the further I go into this journey, the more I'm uncovering it. And that's why I'm getting all the deja vus. My path's there. I just need to keep going, keep moving forward, and just never quit. And that's why I'm going to get there.
Brilliant. It's amazing chatting to you, Josh. For anybody that's watching, please take time to share this on your feeds with anybody else. You need to get as much support for Josh as possible. Get more people onto his Facebook page. Get more people following him as well. Keep pushing him on to this as well. This is going to be the 2026 Tour de France winner. Josh will win the Tour de France in 2026. And see when the wee guy jumps out the crowd and goes, any chance of an interview, mate? Please remember me.
Trust me, there's hundreds, thousands of people that have supported me, believed in me in the beginning, and when I get to where I'm going, I'm not going to forget any of the people that helped me in the way up. Not at all. Not at all.
And guys, if you get a chance again, please share this and get the following behind Josh. And thanks very much, Josh, for coming on the show. Absolutely amazing, so inspiring. It's we're going on a journey, and I'm sure we'll catch up in another time as well. And thanks everybody else for watching and commenting as well. Okay, and I'll see you next week on the Sunday Slot, guys. Bye bye.
Right. I can finally go train now. Is that what you're telling me?
You can. Bye.